My name is Andrew Betwain, and I am the editor of fundoperator.com. And today I'm joined by Claire George, who is the Chief Technology and Operations Officer at Savills Investment Management. Hello, Claire, how are you?
Hi, good, thanks.
Claire will be speaking at our Private Markets Investors Conference in March in London. She'll do a panel discussion about how asset managers can rise to the challenge of increasing demands from investors for more detailed information around funds. So Claire, I've got some questions for you about this to whet our appetite for this panel. My first question is, what specific information are investors asking for, and why are these demands increasing?
So investors have traditionally asked for valuation data, performance data, but today they're asking for more and more granular data, things like footfall statistics in shopping centres and occupational stats at hotels. This is information that's typically held by a property manager who is often outsourced by your is not often an outsourced supplier by an investment manager. And as such, investment managers often struggle to have timely information at that sort of granular level. More sophisticated investors have often and long been asking for granular information at a fund level. So they've often been asking for fund and asset level model assumptions and even copies of those models. Fund managers such as ourselves have had to find ways of securely sharing that type of data. So we are able to share information in a timely manner where we're used to doing it. The problem is becoming now that, as I said, the granularity of data that is often requested is new. This is in part because of what regulators are looking at, which is changing, and in part because of new data sets which are arriving, for example, ESG. 5 years ago, we weren't supplying water consumption statistics. In fact, maybe many investment managers weren't even looking at them. But today, that's a typical question from our investors. And obviously, it's something that as an investment manager, we are now looking at specifically through SFDR regulation, for example. So we have had to work out ways of collecting that kind of granularity of data and then sharing it through our traditional platforms to share data.
So there's a lot of new information out there and a lot of new challenges. So my next question is, can you give us some of the solutions for this challenge that you guys are experimenting with and trying to bring out there?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's about making sure that the data is properly curated, that we're sure of a golden data source, so the original data source, that we can rely on it. There's no point in us passing that through to an investor when we're not confident of the data in the first place. So we need to have really reliable data sources. And if that's data that we're producing ourselves, we need to make sure that we can provide audit on that, because again, what's the point in passing on something that's wrong? For us, that really is about a data warehouse. So we have a data warehouse which ingests information from external parties in a uniform manner, and where we hold that as a protected data source. The data is then passed around investors and other teams within the investment management function, where calculations are performed, and then answers are passed back into the data warehouse. We are then again protecting that so that we don't have multiple versions of the same truth. And it's that information which we can then pass on to investors as they require it. And as the investors are asking for more and more different types of data, we are expanding our data warehouse to meet their requirements, for example, on these ESG points that I mentioned earlier.
And so I wanted to sort of turn it around from a different angle. What are some of the ways that asset managers and investment managers can mitigate either the workload from these increasing demands or the demands themselves? How do we work with that? How do we mitigate this rising challenge?
Yeah, making sure that your data is properly maintained and curated really helps, because when you're doing the same calculation 5 times to provide the same piece of information to 5 different investors, it is massively time consuming. So doing the calculation or providing the data once and holding it within a repository is really important for that time saving piece. So a curated data layer, whether you call it a warehouse, a data lake, something along those lines, which you can then use to extract information to meet bespoke reporting requirements. So the advent of things like Power BI, for example, or dashboarding tools, over a data warehouse has really helped meet some of these increasing requirements in a more effective and time efficient manner. The biggest problem we've had is getting that data in the first place in a repeatable fashion, especially when we are getting it from external parties. But once it's in, we're much more able to meet requirements through dashboarding tools and similar.
It's a fascinating topic, and I'm sure at the conference we'll get into a lot more detail. I'd like to thank Claire for her time today. And if you're interested in what she's been saying about this granularity and how you can work with it and mitigate it and what the challenges are, then please do go to clarepathanalysis.com and look up Private Markets Investor, which, as I said, will be taking place at the end of March in London, where Claire will be speaking on this very topic. So thank you very much for watching, and thank you very much, Claire, for your time.